Hello and welcome to the Pre-Chiro Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Glass, and today we're making a professional chiropractor connection out in the Bay Area with Dr. Pete Goldman. Dr. Pete, why don't you just get us started by reflecting on what it was that attracted you to becoming a chiropractor, where you were at in life, what you were up to?
Sure. My pleasure. So, where I was at in life was I was born and raised in New York City. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and I had a very naturally oriented family, meaning we didn't really go to MDs. Our doctors, we had three doctors when I was a little kid. We had three doctors. We had a chiropractor, we had a homeopath, and a naturopath. Those were our three doctors. So, as a kid, I didn't even know really about MDs. I didn't even know what they did because I mean I was a healthy kid. With that said, when I would get adjusted, we go to the naturopath once a year for like a checkup or whatever. And if we needed some other kind of healing, my mom would call the homeopath and tell us what to take, whatever. So I grew up in that kind of environment. I didn't think I would be a chiropractor. It didn't occur to me to do that. I come from a family of business people. My dad, my uncles, my cousins are investment bankers and business owners. So I didn't really think I'd be a chiropractor. I was kind of going that path. I went to college in Boston. I was an economics major, not surprisingly, from what I just mentioned. Like I said, didn't think I would be a chiropractor. It did not really even occur to me at the time. But I will say this, I loved chiropractic. Not to say that I didn't like the naturopath and the homeopath, and that was all cool, but I love chiropractic. I just loved it when I was a kid. And I was lucky because the chiropractor I went to since I was a little kid in Brooklyn was a guy who was a direct disciple of a guy named Dr. Thurman Fleet. And anyone who wants to learn about Dr. Fleet, there's a little website about him. It's drthurmanfleet.com, drthurmanfleet.com. It's a good website. You can read the whole thing in 10 minutes, but you get a good idea who he was. So anyway, this chiropractor in Brooklyn was a disciple of Dr. Fleet. And it's interesting because when people these days think of chiropractic, like, someone just hears the word chiropractic, they usually think, like neck pain, back pain, knee pain, shoulder pain, whatever. And then, sometimes you'll meet a few chiropractors that will say, no, chiropractic it can actually help with much more. But what's interesting, and this is interesting to your pre-Chiro students, your Chiro students, and your DCs, is if you look at D.D. Palmer's book, and D.D. Palmer was the founder of chiropractic. I got a picture of him.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, and Dr. Fleet's up there too. But anyway, D.D. Palmer was the founder of chiropractic, and he wrote a book. In fact, I have the book right next to me. It's called The Chiropractor's Adjuster. And he wrote the book in 1910, 15 years after he discovered chiropractic or created chiropractic. And it's very interesting because if you read his book, it's a little over 1,000 pages. And 98% of it is not about neck and back pain. It's about healing organs. It's about thyroids and livers and circulation and immune system. That's what chiropractic was actually invented for. So it's kind of funny, like we were saying, it's like people think of chiropractic as neck and back pain. But the thing that's even more interesting is that some chiropractors will say like, hey, of course chiropractic's for neck and back pain, but it's really for so much more. Well, I would actually say, let me rephrase that. I'm not saying, let me just quote the founder. He never said chiropractic is for much more than neck and back pain. He didn't even say it was for neck and back pain. He said chiropractic was to heal every cell in the body if done properly. And then on a side note, it happens to also help neck and back pain. Like side note. So anyway, I went to one of these chiropractors who did that. I went to a chiropractor growing up who was doing that. That's what his office was like. And then fast forwarding, in the many years that I practiced since the mid 90s, if you went into my waiting room and you said to people, hey, what are you here for? Like, what? Why did you come see Dr. Pete? 85% of the people, maybe 90% of the people sitting in my waiting room will tell you they came for their thyroid, their liver, their blood sugar, their blood pressure, their immune system, their circulatory system, their digestive system. That's what I do, the old school chiropractic. And if someone happens to have neck and back pain, I'll wrap it up. I'll wrap it up real quick. So that's kind of my evolution to become a chiropractor. I guess I left out the fact that after I graduated college, I went back to New York City from Boston. I worked for 4 years in business. And then I was kind of like, maybe I should be a chiropractor. It just was kind of like in my head. And then after I worked for 4 years, I'm like, you know what, I'll just do it. So then I went to chiropractic school and became a chiropractor.
And yeah, can you reflect on just having had that upbringing within a office that had that type of tone, and then entering a chiropractic school that maybe had a completely different type of vibe, or maybe a completely different message? Maybe it was on message. I'm just curious, what if you could reflect on your chiro student story, what you were attracted to? Did you remain connected to Zone or to Dr. Thurman Fleet's work with concept therapy? I'm just curious if you could elaborate on how that was for you entering into a school, having had so much experience directly receiving the care, but I'm not sure how much you had done to actually study what it would be like for you to deliver the care.
Great question. So what I did was, it was interesting when I got to chiropractic school in 1993. When I got there, they had a lot of what's called adjusting clubs. And you know what that means, for those who don't know, what it means is there's many different techniques in chiropractic. I think there's like 250 or 300, I don't know. But anyway, so they would have like the motion palpation club, the Gonstead club. These are techniques. The SOT club, the AK club, this particular upper cervical club, this upper cervical club, whatever. So I was very curious. So I would go to, there's only so many hours in a week, but I would go to as many clubs as I could. It was like, oh, Monday night is this, Tuesday night is this, motion palpation, Gonstead. So I was a very deep studier of all the techniques. Now, meanwhile, I called my chiropractor back in Brooklyn. And like you said, I was kind of like, what's going on with this school? The school is like, I don't know what they're teaching here, because I could tell right away the real, or what I perceived as the real chiropractic from being exposed to him since childhood. That's not what was going on in my school. I mean, they were talking a good game, but they weren't doing it. But I was trying to supplement it by going to these different clubs. But what I found interesting about the clubs was, it's very interesting because, for example, Doc, let's say you love peaches, the fruit, but your friend loves plums. I mean, it's okay. Like, you love peaches, he loves plums, you don't really care. He doesn't really care. You respect that you like a different fruit, but you still enjoy the fruit that you like. But I found that when I went to the adjusting clubs, they were really like criticizing each other. It was kind of, I didn't really care, but it was just like an interesting observation, because when I went to the motion palpation club, they were kind of dissing Gonstead. They would explain why actually that motion palpation was far superior to Gonstead, which makes sense to an extent because that's the one they picked, but they really criticized Gonstead pretty badly. And when I went to like the Gonstead club, they were kind of like laughing at the Thompson club, but the leg checks, whatever. And I saw that even like a network doctor, which is a technique in chiropractic, at least when I was exposed to network, they were saying things like you have to gently prepare the meninges for like 10 visits or so before you even adjust someone, because if you adjust them before that, you're hurting them. So I'm thinking like, well, the Gonstead doctor's x-ray, and on the second visit, or maybe the first, they're cracking away. According to the network doctors, are actually damaging the person. And then when I went to CBP, which stands for chiropractic biophysics, they were I'm not saying they're good or bad, but they were the mecca of laughing at everybody. I mean, they thought the other techniques were literal garbage. As a matter of fact, Don Harrison, the founder of CBP, spoke at my school when I was there, and I saw him. I sat right in the front row, and I heard him say, and he explained why. He didn't make a blanket statement that all the other techniques were garbage. He said why. He said, okay. He said, let's take this. He took motion palpation, and he explained why it was utterly worthless. He took upper cervical, knee, chest. He explained, and toggle, and he explained why it was totally worthless, et cetera, et cetera. So whatever. So here I am going, trying to learn all these things. Now I call my chiropractor, and he goes, look, there's another disciple of Dr. Thurman Fleet. I mean, these guys were like in their 80s, because Fleet was from the 30s. So they learned it way back. They're practicing for 45 years or whatever. So he goes, there's another disciple of Dr. Thurman Fleet. He's in Georgia. He's like, because I went to school in Marietta, which is by Atlanta, for 4 years. But anyway, so I called this dude who was like 80 or something, or in the 70s, but he studied from Dr. Fleet back in the day. So his wife answered. I was in prereqs at the time. I was still going to these clubs trying to figure out what was going on based on what I just told you a minute ago. So I call up, and his wife answers, and she's like, well, he's kind of like, he's like kind of semi-retired, but, we still have a practice in our house. So why don't you come over on Sunday? You could meet him. I'm in prereqs at the time. So on Sunday, just before, GPS and the internet, a couple of years before the internet was more popular, 1993. So I wrote the directions down, and I drove out. It was in a place called Tyrone, Georgia, which is like about a 45-minute drive from Marietta, Georgia, where I was in school. So I drove out there, and he was nice, really nice guy, but didn't seem like not what I would call a dynamic individual. He was kind of like a old Southern guy, but nice, very, very kind. But I mean, I'm born and raised in Brooklyn. I'm used to a little something different, but he was very nice, and I was very nice, and I was happy to be there, And he's explaining all kinds of stuff to me that was just way over my head. I couldn't follow a word this freaking guy was saying. Like, he was talking some like heavy duty metaphysical stuff and some hardcore healing stuff. And here I am, like, a month into prereqs or whatever. I couldn't follow a damn word he was saying. And then he said to me this. He said, do you want to know why healing works when it works and why healing doesn't work when it doesn't work? And he said, and this applies to anything. It applies to every chiropractic technique, homeopathy, acupuncture, naturopathy, Reiki, whatever. He said, there's a common denominator in healing. When this is tapped into either on purpose or by accident or whatever, either intentionally or inadvertently, then healing occurs. So he tells me that. And I was like, yeah, tell me, what am I going to say? So he actually showed me this chart. He like kind of had this big chart, and he was like explaining the chart. And he explained the chart to me for like 45 minutes. I don't think I could really follow what he was saying, but it seemed interesting. And then he asked me if I wanted to get adjusted, which I said, sure. And he gave me a spectacular adjustment. I mean, the adjustment was like 2 minutes long, but he was, this guy was a grandmaster healer, so anyway, so I remember thinking, this is kind of a significant moment in my life. I remember thinking, well, this was in my head. Well, this was a really good way to start my 4 years of school, Oh, 1 second here. Oh, I see what that is. So, anyway, I thought this is a really good way to start my 4 years of school. Here I am about to embark on 4 years of study. And I'm starting it off on this Sunday morning with this healing master. That's what I was thinking. I didn't think I'd ever see him again. And as I was leaving his office or his house, whatever, he said, come back next Sunday. He told me that. So I went every Sunday for 4 years. So that's where I learned how to heal. I didn't learn it in maybe there's some good schools now, but not when I went to school. So I just went to school, got my degree, did what they, I didn't make any trouble. I did what they said, And then as far as like, they tell me what to write in the test, I put in the test, pass my classes. And every Sunday I'm going to him. So now this is kind of an interesting part. So remember, I'm going from prereqs the whole time pretty much to him. But I was like, Pete, you know what? Don't be tunnel vision to Dr. Fleet's work or whatever. You still going to these adjusting clubs. You got to check it out. Don't just drop everything in prereqs and just go with this guy. So I'm like, all right. So I'm still going every Sunday to him, but I'm still going motion palpation, Gonstead Club, SOT, this, AK, upper cervical, freaking, network, whatever. Because I want to see, maybe it's not the best. I want to do the best one. So, everyone says they're the best one, but, I want to figure out what's the best one. So I'm seeing CBP, this, that. So I got pretty into, not into, but I went to the motion palpation club quite a bit. I don't know why, just one I went to a lot. I guess it made sense to me at the time. And then I went to I was really into CBP. I kind of like CBP. I don't know. Not that I don't like CBP, but it's nothing to me now. But at the time I was like, CBP makes a lot of sense. So I kind of like CBP. Gonstead, I couldn't really tell, whatever. So, and then upper cervical network. So then I remember it was about I think it was my vacation between third and fourth quarter. So I was there for a while. I was like, first quarter prereqs, second quarter prereqs, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. That's 5 quarters. So that's a year and a quarter. So for a year and a quarter, I'm going to all these clubs, doing my classes and going to this guy every Sunday. And I remember it was almost like, when people say like, oh, I had a light bulb moment, like a light bulb went over my head. It's kind of an expression. I don't think a lot of people experience that, but I did. I remember I was on vacation between third and fourth quarter, and I just was thinking about everything. And I was thinking about this guy on Sundays, and I was thinking about these guys, and I was thinking about Don Harrison was saying what he said. And then I said to myself, I said, man, all it really matters is results. Like, who gets the best results? These guys are all saying they're the best, but who gets the best results? And I was thinking about it, and I was like, man, this guy on Sundays, he gets better healing results than all these other techniques put together. I'm like, these guys, I mean, these other techniques say, oh, chiropractic's for more than neck and back pain. I'm a nervous system doctor, but they're doing all neck and back pain. And they can't, if someone comes into them and says that they have like endometriosis, I mean, they don't know what to do. I mean, they'll say, give me a break. They don't know what to do. Or if someone comes into them and says that they're having like gallbladder attacks and some MD wants to take their gallbladder out, but they don't want to get their gallbladder out. They want their gallbladder to heal. They don't know what to do. Give me a break. So, but this guy on Sundays, he knew what to do. He fixed that stuff like he was fixing a stiff neck. So then I remember it was fourth quarter. I was like, screw it. I dropped everything. And I went full-fledged with this guy on Sundays and other mentors I had of the Dr. Fleet lineage. Of course, my guy in Brooklyn, I was on the phone with him all the time. I visited him on all my vacations. And then what I did, because you had asked about Zone School. So I had these mentors, the guy on Sundays in Georgia, my guy in Brooklyn, there's two other guys. So I had four mentors of the Dr. Fleet lineage, four mentors who all studied from Dr. Fleet. And I spent over 100 hours one-on-one with each of them. So I spent, over 400, 500 hours one-on-one with these healing masters. That's where I learned what I know. So I had this, it was called zone therapy. Dr. Fleet called it, he created in 1931 zone therapy. He's up there too, Dr. Fleet. Mm-hmm. Dr. Fleet, D.D. Palmer, Dr. Fleet. Anyway, so I learned zone therapy essentially, which was Dr. Fleet's thing that he established in 1931. But then I had many other influences in healing, metaphysics, martial arts, etc. And then I kind of took what I had learned, which was the zone therapy, and I altered it a bit based on all my experiences, and I created zone technique. And then I created Zone School, which teaches zone technique and principles of healing, which you certainly ain't going to learn in chiropractic school, that's for sure. So that's where it's at. And by the way, you mentioned the Bay Area. I live in Tennessee now. I moved from California to Tennessee last year. Just FYI.
Smart. Congrats. Way to adapt. Yeah. Do you got to handle something? It's all good. That's what video editors are for. You keep looking over. All right, it's all good.
No, there's all kinds of noise out there. I was just seeing what it was. I'm gonna share it after. We're good.
All right, so you mentioned martial arts. You talked about lineage. You talked the depth of lineage. I really appreciate you touching on lineage because I think lineage is so important, and that's why I bring people such as yourself on here, because you have connection to the original root of chiropractic through your lineage, and you acknowledge that, and you're aware of that, and you probably would admit that you just admitted that you had to spend 100 hours with each of these grandmasters to become who you are today. So, what's up with the the School of Zone Healing? Talk about what you've gravitated towards based on your background in martial arts, how you've worked with martial artists. Maybe give the prospective student an understanding of who you can work with as a chiropractor, or who you've been able to work with, and just the opportunity you've been given, and how you've taken that and made the most of it.
Okay, so let's start with Zone School, and then we'll go to the martial arts and anything else you want. So for Zone School, it's like this. So I wouldn't really put it in the light bulb moment category like the other one, but I had a cool moment I'm going to tell you about in my life. This is what happened. So it was about 5 years ago. I don't remember exactly how long ago it was, about 5 years ago. And at the time, my practice, if you think about most chiropractors or most doctors, their patient base lives probably within a half hour of their office. Most of them. I mean, I know there's exceptions. There's, one patient who just loves them, so they drive 2 hours. I understand that, but 95% of their patient base is like in a half hour radius of their office. But I remember thinking about 5 years ago that I had at that point already patients fly into me from 25 different countries and cities around the world: New York, Chicago, Guam, Hawaii, Japan, Malaysia, various countries in Europe. So people are flying into me from all over the freaking world with systemic health issues, and some musculoskeletal too, which they had tried other chiropractors and acupuncturists and medical doctors and not healed, flying in to see me. And I had at the time, I counted at the time, about 150 patients of my many patients driving 4 hours each way. So I'm thinking they're driving 8 hours in a freaking day for 2 minutes with me or 3 minutes because of the results. So I'm thinking this. I remember having this thought, and it was a gratifying thought. I'm like, well, look, my practice is pretty damn good. But this is what happened. One of the countries that a lot of people were coming to me from was Malaysia. And I'm mentioning this for a reason. So I had helped this one dude from Malaysia, and he told a bunch of people, and they're all flying over to see me. But I remember this one dude contacts me right around that time when I thought this. And he's like, hey, you heard, but blah, blah, blah. You helped my friend, but I'm going to come see you. And I was like, okay, well, just tell me when you're going to come, whatever. And he tells me, he's like, oh, I'm having he's like, I have to make like t-shirts. I'm making like a t-shirt sale to raise money. And I was thinking like, this is crazy. I can't believe this guy doesn't have hardly any money. He's like having like a t-shirt sale where people are, donating money. I said, man, I have to teach this to people all over the world so they don't have to fly into me and drive 4 hours or whatever. So that was the spark in my head to make Zone School. That's how it started. Now, of course, I didn't know much about like having an online school. It was not really my expertise, but I learned how. And then I created Zone School, which is an online program. It's online. It's about 50 hours. Well, the basic course is about 50 hours of material. It's about 400 hours inside of it. But if you join Zone School, you get 50 hours of me teaching you how to heal and get results like I get. And that's why people come from all over the world for it. So you join Zone School. And by the way, the website for those interested is zoneschoolofhealing.com. Zoneschoolofhealing.com. So anyway, you go to zoneschoolofhealing.com if one is interested. You learn about it. You can join right there. Now, if one joins Zone School, they got, like I said, about 50 hours of knowledge, and then they are hopefully on their way to becoming a healing master. With that said, I also teach optional live events. So again, if someone goes to the website that I mentioned, zoneschoolofhealing.com, there's a tab that says live events. You click on live events and you'll see that every month I teach a live event somewhere in the world. And people are welcome to attend if they're obviously a chiropractor or in chiropractic school. Are welcome to attend. And it's a supplemental and optional thing to Zone School. So that's what Zone School is. That's the Zone School piece. As far as the martial arts piece, I grew up in a bad neighborhood. I grew up in Brooklyn when it was treacherous. Now Brooklyn is really fancy. Now Brooklyn is like one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the United States. But when I grew up in Brooklyn, it was treacherous. And just walking home from school without getting attacked was like a plus. So anyway, I just started taking martial arts when I was very young, just for self-survival. I didn't have any, spiritual aspirations, or some people really enjoy martial arts or self-improvement. I was just trying to survive. So anyway, when I was 16, I joined a karate school called, it was a Kyokushin karate school. And, people hear the word karate, think of like Karate Kid, but that's kind of like it's like a game of tag. You hit each other. It's like tag. It's like point. But Kyokushin, it's kind of like Thai boxing for those who know what that is. But Kyokushin, when you fight, you're trying to knock each other out. You're trying to knock. The goal is to knock the guy out cold. That's what you're trying to do. So I joined a school like that, and I don't know what the word is. I did well in it. I just did it for self-defense, but I kind of was athletic or whatever. So I just kind of did well at it. And then I kind of started moving up the ranks. And then when I graduated college, I started training like a maniac. I was training like 6 days a week, 2 hours a day or something like that. And then I started fighting in international tournaments against, some of the best fighters in the world. And then later, then I kind of stopped that when I went to chiropractic school. And then after chiropractic school, I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I have a black belt in. That was always like recreational. I was really into the Kyokushin. The Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu I like, don't get me wrong. I like it a lot. I still do it. But it was always kind of a recreational thing. I just did it long enough to get a black belt, but it was more like a recreational thing for me. And I had a lot of experiences in the martial arts, which made me understand how the mind worked. Because And again, everyone has their own experience, and if people have learned about the mind in some other ways, that's good. I can't speak for them, but I can just speak for myself. When you read a book about the mind, like a Zen book or a Buddhist book or whatever, of course, well, Zen is obviously Zen Buddhism, but I'm saying like that kind of thing. They talk a lot about the nature of the mind, which is good. I mean, I'm not saying it's not valid. It probably is. But at least for me, reading the book, I couldn't really understand really the mind very well. I just was reading words. Now, one could say, well, if you do proper Zen meditation, you can kind of through meditation have these experiences with the mind, which I believe, by the way. But anyway, when I was training with my Kyokushin master, and I got lucky, just like Dr. Fleet's the master of healing. I just kind of I was 16 years old. I just walked into some school, but for those who know about Kyokushin, Shigeru Oyama, and you could look him up. He's got a Wikipedia page. He's one of the greatest, considered by many the greatest Kyokushin master ever, considered by many. He was the founder's top student. Masoyama was the founder, and he was my teacher. So I went from white through black belt with him and all that stuff. So he training with him made me understand the mind. He never talked about it. He hardly spoke English. He was speaking Japanese. I mean, I was trying to keep up with him. I was trying to learn Japanese to understand him. I mean, he spoke English, of course, but he spoke a lot of Japanese too, and I was learning Japanese to understand him. And my experiences with him made me understand the mind. And again, I'm not saying other people don't understand the mind. They might have done Zen meditation or something else, but I understood it through my experiences with him, through hard, brutal training. That's when you understand the mind, for me. And then understanding the mind helped me shape what I taught in zone school. Again, I'm not telling anyone in zone school to do martial arts or do any of that stuff, but I have already the experience and the knowledge of how the mind works, and that helps me teach that to help the practitioner and also help them help their patients. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. And then you also asked about the people. Okay, you asked about the martial artists. So here's a cool story for you martial arts buffs out there, or you MMA fans or whatever. So it was 2004. I was already practicing for a while. I graduated in 97. It was 2004. And BJ Penn, for those who like MMA, could probably love BJ Penn. If you don't know who he is, you could look him up. But he's considered one of the greatest MMA fighters ever. He's one of only three, I think, ever 2-division world champions. I think only 3 people ever did that in MMA. So he's one of 3 2-division MMA world champions, and in his era, he was considered the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world in MMA in his era. So anyway, it was 2004. He was already world champ. He was the UFC welterweight world champ at the time, and he hurt his neck very badly. And he went to several chiropractors and several medical doctors and several acupuncturists, and it was getting pretty desperate. Like his neck hurt all the time. It just hurt 24 hours a day. Like his neck never didn't hurt. It just always hurt. So his neck is really an issue, and he's going to wherever he can. And he got to the point they're like, man, you got to retire, and you got to get neck surgery. Like both, you got to retire, and you got to get neck surgery. But he found me, and I worked on him, and in 6 visits, I don't know, where's the camera? 6 visits, he was all better. Done, 2004. So at the time, he was so famous that like all these martial arts magazines, like there was one called Ultimate Grappling back then. I don't even know if it still exists, but that was a very respected martial arts magazine back in 2004. It was called Ultimate. It used to be called Grappling Magazine, and they changed it to Ultimate Grappling, I think. I don't even know if it still exists, but back then that was like the very prestigious publication, and they did like it was like a front page story on me or something like that. And then Black Belt Magazine did a story, and there was not a picture of me on the front page, but Zone Technique was on the front page of Black Belt Magazine. So then all these other martial artists just start coming out of the woodwork. And then over the years, I've taken care of Gilbert Melendez, Jake Shields, Bas Rutten, Hickson Gracie, Clark Gracie, Crone Gracie, Higgin Machado, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And again, I don't even consider myself a sports chiropractor trying to adjust athletes. But over the years, I've had NHL captains come to me, captains of NHL hockey teams. I've had NFL superstars come to me. I don't even like football. I don't even follow football, but I've had some of the best football players in the world come to me. So MMA, hockey.
All right, let's shift just because I really only have like 10 more minutes with you, to be honest. All right, so here we are, 2022. I'm working on this project. It's trying to support students more. In just reflecting on the students that are working with you through the Zone Healing School, what are you observing within the profession, within the people that are working with you specifically? How easy are they getting into this and staying in this? Are they staying focused and committed? What are some maybe success stories that you can look at of like what it looks like to be successful in the program that you've created? What are some of the outcomes that you're looking at? What are some of the strategies that you're teaching? Just get into some of the details and keep that to like less than 5.
No problem. And if I go over, just tell me. With that said, excellent question. I'm gonna preface my answer with an interesting fact. So I'm going to go back to my chiropractic school to answer your question and still keep it under 5 minutes. So here's the thing. So when I'm in chiropractic school, I'm learning from this dude on Sundays. So now I'm in like 4th quarter, 5th quarter, 6th quarter. But I know stuff that no one else knows, in school at least. So I'm getting better results than, well, definitely all the other students, but then the doctor's there. So now I'm in like 8th quarter, 9th quarter. And guess what? By 9th quarter, half the faculty are my patients. When have you heard that? Never. So the teachers there are like, what's this kid doing? And they're coming to my damn apartment off campus and getting adjusted and asking me questions about healing. The most prominent docs teaching at Life College then were half of them were my, you could say, students almost, and certainly my patients. So anyway, so similarly, when a current chiropractic school student joins Zone School, and by the way, if you're a chiro student, don't join on the link because we actually have a pretty severe discount for chiropractic students. So a DC would go to the website that I mentioned and click and join. But if you're a chiro student, then email me, drpete@zonetechnique.com, drpete@zonetechnique.com, and say, hey, I'm a chiro student. I want to join Zone School. Send me the discount link because you got a pretty deep discount. Anyway. So the chiro students in Zone School they're like, man, I know more about healing than all my teachers. I'm like, I know, but don't tell them that. Just get through school, pass your courses, don't make trouble. But yeah, we have chiro students, to answer your question specifically, getting miraculous results. Their teachers are bewildered by their results. And I actually find that it's in a way slightly easier, not always, but it's slightly easier to teach chiro students than chiropractors because chiropractors have all this garbage in their head that I have to remove in order to give them what I'm trying to teach them. And then I would just kind of end this answer by saying, and it's not about chiro students, but I think you'll find this interesting. Something that I've heard, and I don't know how many times, but I'm going to say like 400 times. I don't know exactly how. No, not that many. Like 300 times I've heard this. Hey, Dr. Pete, I've been a chiropractor for 30 years, and I joined Zone School 6 months ago. So I had a successful 30-year practice, and 6 months of those 30 years I've been in Zone School. They're like, man, and some of them do AK or Gonstead or SOT. Dr. Pete, man, I feel like everything I knew before the last 6 months was like kindergarten compared to what I know now. So even the DCs, the veterans, are opening their mind enough to do what I'm teaching them, and the chiro students are doing great, really great. We have a lot of chiro students doing fantastic.
Do you think that there's aspects of the program that should be prerequisite to chiropractic school? Because it seems like you're teaching some of the fundamentals of healing.
Yes, I don't know if it will ever happen, but I'll say this. This is the most important thing I'll say in today's interview. In chiropractic school, they teach about innate, which is good. I'm glad they do. But I teach how to contact and direct innate, and that's the difference. It's a huge difference because if some chiropractor says, well, innate is there, innate's going to take care of whatever needs taken care of, especially with no subluxations. So we'll find the subluxations, relieve the subluxations. Now we've covered everything. The person has innate. We took the subluxations away. They're set. But it doesn't work like that because plenty of people get adjusted and they're sick and they don't, whatever. But if you know how to contact innate and direct innate with the healing image, then you get the so-called miracles of healing again and again and again. And that is not a small, a humongous part of Zone School. And that would be nice if they taught that properly in the Chiro evolution, whether it's whatever that is, or during school, how innate really works. Because innate by itself is not enough, because everyone's got innate and plenty of people are sick. And so plenty of people get adjusted. They're still sick. So they have innate and they get adjusted. But if you know how to contact and direct innate, it's like apples and oranges. That's what I would say.
Can you give like a 2 minute or a 3 minute deep dive into how your approach with zone helps contact and direct innate?
Sure. And by the way, contacting and direct innate is separate from zone. The zones is just a physical technique, which I teach, but the contacting and directing innate.
So what is zone? And then finish what you were about to say.
Sure. The zone is basically dividing the body up into the 6 main systems of the body: glandular, eliminative, nerve, digestive, muscular, and circulatory. And realizing that any problem anyone has, any disease, any disease, any condition, any ache or pain, it's due to a disturbance in one or more of the 6 zones. I have a way to show them to determine which of the 6 zones is not balanced, to gently stimulate the spinal cord with a gentle adjustment, or if you want to do a hard adjustment, go ahead, doesn't matter, and reset the zones in question so they can heal. So that's the zones briefly. I mean, that's the 30-second summary of what takes hours and hours and hours to teach in full. And then contacting and directing innate, it works like this. The way to contact innate is by having proper rapport with a patient, and learning to have proper rapport with a patient is a science. It's an actual science, which I teach. It takes me, hours and hours for me to teach how to do that. But once I teach it, you know it. And then directing, that's how to contact innate with proper rapport. And directing innate is putting the proper healing image into innate. And most chiropractors have no idea how to put the proper healing image. Any chiropractor who has the spinal degeneration charts in their office should throw them out immediately. That is the exact opposite way to correctly direct innate. That's directing innate to disease. So if you know how to direct innate toward health, the results prove it.
Mm-hmm. Hey man, I gotta run, but I really appreciate you taking some time to rock with me this morning. I'm also from New York, out here doing my thing.
Are you in New York right now?
What's up?
Are you in New York this moment?
I came home last night actually from New York.
Oh, cool. Very nice.
Yes, sir. I'm not from Brooklyn though. I'm from upstate. I don't know if you heard of Middletown, Hudson Valley area.
Oh, yeah. I'm not super familiar with it, but just being from New York State, you always hear the different parts of upstate. So I don't know if I've been there, but definitely.
It's like an hour above the city. It's by West Point. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, like I said, to share with the students. There's so much more. We could talk for another 2 hours, to be honest with you. I had a lot more to get into, but I feel like this is a good flavor. It introduces people to what you're up to, what you're offering, and it's going to help students just tap in, get exposed. If it calls to them, they'll follow down the rabbit hole. They'll spend more time with you.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. And I think what you're doing is great, sincerely. So you're going to help a lot of people, which is fantastic.
No doubt.